So let's get started then. Okay, welcome all three of you to this second program of our 2020 Lunch and Learn series. Since our last program, it feels like the entire world has come to a screeching halt. So many of you will be working from home. Others may be out of a job, and still others may be struggling to retain their sanity and make sure their kids continue their education at home. Our hearts go out to all of you. At the end of the program, we will be opening up the floor for you to share your stories and to let Karama know how we can help you. But for now, let's take a walk down memory lane. March is Women's History Month, and so in today's session, Dr. Aziza Al-Hibri will be sharing with us her recollections of her experiences at the Beijing Conference of 1995. Let's begin by setting the scene. The fourth World Conference on Women was held in Beijing, China in September of 1995. While the official delegations met in Beijing, the NGO forum was held in nearby Wairu. So tell us, Aziza, what led you to decide that you had to attend the Beijing conference?
Well, you know, there were preparations for the Beijing conference. As early as 1985, the UN held a conference on women in Copenhagen, and I attended that. A lot of Arab and Muslim women were present at the conference, and it became clear to me that the same feminist agenda that was being pushed in the United States was now being advanced on the international arena. And that again, it was the Orientalist point of view of liberating those oppressed women, in particular Muslims. I'm sure there were other groups as well, but Muslim women, because their religion oppresses them. And we will do this through the United Nations. In fact, the feminist movement was able to do some things through the UN it couldn't do at home. For example, it pushed CEDAW. And in Copenhagen, there were meetings, one of which I attended, in which an American woman attorney was trying to talk to third world women. We called them third world at that time, and it was a positive term to use. And it united all of us in the US and outside of the US, who are now, we call them people of color. And she was trying to get their approval for the proposals she had put in front of them, when many of them, most of them, could only know functional English, as opposed to legal English, where even a comma would make a difference. And I was sure that had they really understood some of these ideas, you know, they wouldn't be approving them, but they were being very polite, and she would explain something and say, is this okay? And they shake their heads. And I could see how this is happening. It was not really informed consent. It was not a democratic process. So I was very upset about that. In the meantime, after Copenhagen, there was a regional meetings all over the world, 5 of them, I think, in preparation for Beijing. And the Arab one was in Jordan. And when I went to Jordan, I saw the same scene again, that the people the women in attendance were not in control. They were being dictated to. When I arrived at my table at the conference, the resolutions that we are supposed to suggest to the people in New York so that they will formulate their agenda for Beijing, these resolutions were already on the desk from day one. And when I inquired, I was told that these came to us from New York. These are the resolutions they'd like, or recommendations they would like us to pass. And then they will take it from there to Beijing. So clearly all of this really missed a lot of democratic process, and it was a problem. The US till this day has not approved CEDAW, but the US continues to pressure other Muslim governments to approve it. And I know this for a fact because in one situation I had advised against approving the convention because there are issues for Muslims that need to be discussed. And it was in the end approved anyway. And I was told if the pressure was just too high. So here we see the feminist movement and American pressure joining to pass conventions, rules, agreements, etc. at the UN, in which the third world people did not have a real input, but very often were pressured to join. For these reasons, first of all, as you know, originally that was the reason you and I and our third friend decided to go ahead and establish Karama. But as time progressed, you guys went up on with your life, but I was in the U.S. and within the whole situation of feminist movement and so on, I could only see this increase. And so we decided it's really important for us to attend the Beijing conference because that conference is going to bring a lot of Muslim women, and we need to see what's happening there as well and let them know our point of view. Let Karama warn about what we see is happening, namely that our voice is being appropriated by a secular voice that sees us as oppressed and unliberated. That's why we went there. Oh, I should mention that in between this and in preparation for this, there was even a meeting, a conference in Egypt, which was on population, basically population control. And again, that was led by feminists from here. And I had an article that I had written for the UN before that on what does Islam say about abortion and contraception, and they wanted to use that for the conference. It was very clear what the kind of wave that was happening from the feminist West to the Muslim East.
But I think when you and I discussed this earlier, it wasn't just the pressure from a Western orientalized point of view. There was also the issue that you felt that a lot of the official delegations coming from majority Muslim countries also had an agenda. So they were basically pushing the agenda of their governments, and that between the Western orientalized view and the statist view that was being pushed by a lot of the official delegations, there was no space for an independent Muslim voice.
That's what we discovered when we arrived in Nuero. We were going there to meet the women. We met the women, but most of these women were sent there on the budget of their government. As you know, third world women are not, these days they are better off and they can go on their own, etc. But in those days, if an organization did not have the support of its government, it couldn't do much. The budget came from the government. And so did the literature. And the literature really, for example, one country sent a statement about women's rights in Islam, totally patriarchal, totally unresponsive to what women were talking about in this time and age. Al-Azhar sent one too, which was of the same nature. They had not caught up with gender equity as they do now, and so much money was spent on these flyers and booklets and so on. There was a whole room packed with them. No one wanted to touch them. So when Karama did its own workshop there in the rain and wind and cold, it was attended by some women. These women went and talked to the others, and they said something like, Karama has a different point of view, an independent point of view, to use your term. And so they asked to meet with us, and we asked to meet with them. And suddenly there was a meeting with Muslim women from all over the world, sitting in an open area, talking about issues, and with Karama telling them, what do we do, how we do it, and it is based on the Quran and Sunnah. We're not the Orientalist feminist Muslims. We are Muslims. We are Muslims rooted in the Quran and Sunnah. And that made our position very popular. A lot of the women liked us. And in fact, we ended up putting together a press release that Karama could share with people here, in which we expressed exactly this kind of critique. And all the women had voted to be with us so that it will come out not only as Karama, but third world women. And as soon as we went to the media room to issue it, then started the contacts, I guess, from the governments, etc., people representing the government in the media room, and they put the pressure on the women to back out, and they wanted us to back out and do something very simple, very, non-critical, whatever, and we refused to. So Karama went ahead with its press release, and we know that the women loved it, but the governments were very, very opposed to women finding their own voice and their own muscle at a international conference.
Aziza, who did you go to the conference with? Remind me again.
So Asifa was Qureshi was part of Karama at that time. She was also part of the Muslim Women League in California because she had worked in California and moved to us. So when she moved to the East, she kept her relationship with them. At that time, we found out that Layla al-Marayati, who was one of the founders, I believe, of Muslim Women League, was invited by Hillary Clinton to be on her delegation in official, that means a formal in Beijing, formal delegation in Beijing. So we found out about this, Asifa and I, and we decided to go, and we decided to join hands with Muslim Women's League. So our workshop was done in conjunction with them, and one of them was also Samar, you'll find her name.
Samar Hathout.
Hathout, yes, I love her father. I should never forget that last name, Allah yarhamu. He was a great Muslim American figure. So Samar Hathout, we have a picture of her next to me in the cold giving our workshop. Asifa Qureshi, and I believe Layla al-Marayati at time was able to leave the official and come to us for just a short time. I should mention that in preparation to the conference, we held meetings at Karama, DC, to which Karima Al-Tomar and many other women leaders at that time came and advised us that it's a good idea before we go that we write something, a paper, that we could distribute. That was the paper we distributed called Introduction to Muslim Women's Rights, which was later published in Windows of Faith. And that paper really had a great impact for the Muslim women who read it.
So remind me again, to the best of your knowledge, Layla al-Marayati was the only prominent American Muslim woman who was invited to be part of the US official delegation.
Well, not only the only prominent one, but I think the only one, as far as I know. Might have been the
only one.
Yeah, I think that was, in those days, nobody really thought too much about Muslim women. But in California, Muslims were active, and you know, that was a deserved invitation from Hillary Clinton to Layla.
So I wonder if I could ask Rahma right now if you can bring up your PowerPoint. Rahma has put together pictures and also a PDF of the press release that was sent around. So perhaps, Aziza, as we go through this PowerPoint, you can say some stuff about it.
So when I was in Huero, we were being bused from Beijing to Huero, I think daily. And I decided to take a look around Beijing. We did a lot of sightseeing, Asifa and I. The one thing I was very surprised about is when they asked us whether we would like to visit a Beijing mosque, which is now over 1,000 years old. And I said, okay, you're looking at the entrance. That has been around for over 1,000 years in Beijing. I'll show you, the next slide should be about the inside. This is the inside of the masjid, and you can see people praying. When the prayer took place, of course, we were shown to the women's section. However, the women's section in this mosque is totally outside this historical building. In the back, you have to walk through a pathway in the garden. And then there is a modern building, and a building, a sort of a large room. You go inside and the women are there and they are praying. But they could barely hear the imam. There is no video, nothing. They're isolated there. And I had a talk with them about this, and of course they would have liked a better situation where they could be part of the mosque. But these were the last century. People still did things differently, even in the US. I also asked them about their experience in China. Like they wore veils, and I asked them if they could go outside in the street and like that, and whether there is a problem with it or not. And I think, I can't swear to that, but I think some of them said that they modify their outfit outside the mosque, but that in any way they keep to themselves and nobody bothers them. So they're okay, but you know, they're behaving like a minority. But you know, if they keep to themselves and do not make trouble, you know, nobody bothers them.
And
So
were you able to take any other trips? I mean, or was it all business, business, business when
no,
you
we
were
took a
there?
lot of trips. We went to the Forbidden City. We went, oh, this is a picture of us. You see me wearing my raincoat. I was freezing because this was in the open air. It was raining. There was like a tent above us, but all the sides were open to the wind. And we were sitting there for a while, lecturing about our opinions. This is Samar Hathout, by the way, with me. So this is part of the picture of the workshop that we held. It's only one side of it. I'm sorry, I don't have the whole panel. Now here is where I went to the Chinese wall. I wanted to see, you know, what's so special, and it is a wall. And it is hugely long. It goes on and on and on forever.
Looks like it was windy. I think your
It was
umbrella looks like
windy.
it's about to be blown. It has been blown inside out.
Exactly, exactly. So we did look around. This is our meeting with the women from all over the world in different garbs and different perspectives on the world, and they would talk to us. They interacted with us, and it was a very interesting meeting. This is only one side of it, and when I looked at the photos, I found that some men attended this meeting. They decided to come in and attend. Which was fine, but it was a women's meeting. This is where I think we distributed the press release, and they were looking at it. This press release here being distributed at the large meeting with women. It is not at the media room. At the media room, we tried to engage in a lot of discussion because they wanted to modify language here and there. And in the end, we decided it was going to be just too vanilla kind of a press release, which does not express the ideas we have in mind. So we said, we'll just issue it in the name of Karama, and we did that. I think this might be all the photos. This is the press release. And as you see, we talk here about Orientalist approach to Muslim women. We talk about the experience of African American women and how we can benefit from it, and how we change our terminology from feminist to womanist, something that Alice Walker had suggested, and other women of color. It is, I think it is worth reading. It's sort of hard to talk about now, but maybe we can put it on our website. Or Rahma, where do you think we can put it? Where is the best place to put it? And people could look at it more carefully.
I was planning to put it up tomorrow for International Muslim Women's Day. I was going to put it on our Facebook page tomorrow.
Okay.
As, you know, we've been talking about for 25 years, and here's proof that we were there in Beijing in 1995.
So I bet you've taken a look at it. Does it sound obsolete, or does it still speak to us about what we're suffering from in the Muslim world? Or
it is still appropriate today, and the last line is really my favorite, that says, "This should not come as a surprise to anyone, but because Islam does not oppress women, patriarchy does."
Ah, good. Okay. Thank you. Good. All right. So this
As
is
the French would say, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more it changes, the more it stays the same.
Exactly. Exactly. So, okay. This is it.
Thank you so much, Rahma, for operating the PowerPoint for us. So Aziza, tell me a little bit about some of the women that you met and that you, and maybe that you went with to the conference. Have you been able to maintain ties? what's happening with these people, Samer, Hathout, Asifa, all of these?
My experience with the women's movement is that very often women are unable to keep up friendships and contacts over distance for a long time as men can, because we do not have the same facilities they have. Sometimes these facilities need to be financial, sometimes they need to be in terms of availability. Whatever constraints some women have, men do not have them. All I know is that, first of all, we had a list of the women who wanted to, in Copenhagen, we had formed the Third World Party, which we thought, you know, this will change the world. It will give a voice to us, to the Latinas, Chicanas, you know, to African Americans, etc. Everybody is now in this movement. And by the way, there were some very famous names that we had befriended early on from these women that escaped me now. But after the signature and we went home, how are we going to connect with them? How are we going to make this movement go without a huge budget, which we did not have? So it just, nothing could happen at that time. There was no Zoom, there was no Skype. And even today, I mean, as Karama establishes its African Muslim Scholars Network, we cannot use Zoom. Many of them do not have it, and those who have it have to pay for it, which I was surprised to find out.
We have a lot of technological capacity here that has not reached other places as yet, which is really unfortunate when you think about it, because that was such a fantastic opportunity to meet a lot of women who were dedicated to beneficial changes for women all together in one place. And then, as you say, everybody came back home and it sort of deflated.
Yeah, even now, I mean, we have the opportunity to join East and West because Karama has its own LLPers and scholars in places like Singapore, Philippines, even Indonesia. We've been there at one point, and I forget the other countries we were there, and Africa. If we could have brought these two together with us in the middle, it would have been fantastic, but we still can't, because the technology is not made available to them in Africa. It's more available, I think, in the East. I think we will not have a problem with that. But
yes,
so
I
now,
think technologically, I agree with you. Southeast Asia just has a lot more bandwidth, so to speak, than Africa does.
And today, the way we communicate is through WhatsApp. We still do WhatsApp by writing messages to each other. All the scholars comment, you know, like about the coronavirus and whatever. They comment on it on WhatsApp. For us, WhatsApp is yesterday's mode of communication. We don't have a live interaction with, you know, although you could do it also with WhatsApp. I did it with one African scholar who showed me a paper she has written on family law. So we discussed it on WhatsApp face to face. That was very slow because also the internet goes down while you're talking. Okay.
Aziza,
So,
have you forgotten what it was like when we were growing up? The lights were always getting cut off and the telephones didn't work.
When we were growing up, I didn't have even a TV, so there.
That's right. So we should be thankful for the technology we have and hope that, inshallah, in a few years, it will extend into areas where it's not currently available.
What I'm saying, the internet is more reliable here than it is in Africa. So even WhatsApp has its problems, but we'll manage. We have to connect as Muslim women across the continents. We have to find out what unites us and what is specific to each culture and each group on its own. We have to understand each other so that we build a unity which is based on understanding, on diversity. Yes, Muslims are all the same in some sense because we believe in the Quran, we believe in the Prophet and all these things, but we have our specificity. Yes. And this specificity is not only cultural, but intra-cultural at times. And I'm finding that out because, as you know, Karama had established a relationship with King Mohammed Al-Khamis University, where some of the students would research issues for us. And one of the students I'm working with, I'm finding out that he is also being very surprised about information from his country or other countries in Africa, subcultures within the culture he didn't know about. And by the way, I'll tell this to Rahma, he was so intrigued by the interview I did with Dr. Deborah, is it Mujib?
Najid.
Majid, yes, Majid. He asked for her book. He was very intrigued by it. So we're starting to build connections, we're starting to build bridges, and we're discovering the richness of Muslim communities and societies. And I hope that Karama will make a real effort to be the unifying force that brings all these thoughts together and all these women and men, because you cannot bring the Ummah up and around without bringing the men with it. This is not an Ummah of women. This is an ummah of families, of women and men and children, brothers, mothers, grandfathers. You know, if not everybody is on board, we cannot be strong again. And that's one way in which Karama, I think, differs, one important way from the Orientalist feminist approach, etc.
So looking at where we are today in the United States, like what's your prognosis for the direction in which women are going and the extent to which we need a genuine, authentic, informed Muslim voice in the United States?
We need that very much. I think there is some subtle, not resistance, but a subtle attempt to make it difficult for voices like ours to grow and prosper, because we are the authentic voice. I really believe that. I'll give you an example. You might not realize this because you have not done the jurisprudence, okay? But I was at a conference in the Emirates ages ago, because I am pretty old. And there was at this conference, there was a panel on Qiwama. I have my paper on Qiwama, and there was another woman from North Africa, I will not specify the country, who also was speaking on Qiwama. She went ahead of me, and she spoke. And as she spoke, I thought, my God, she has my paper, like she's reading my paper. All her thoughts and my thoughts are so similar. How am I going to go after her and give the same thing? When she was finished, I was asked to speak, and I did. I had to say the same things. So I said them in my own way, and I argued them in my own way. And when we were done, we were told that Sheikha Fatima, who is the Sheikha in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, has invited us to her palace. And when we went there, I saw something that I did not understand. The scholars from the Emirate, women scholars who were listening to both of us, were shunning that North African woman because they said her presentation was secular. And they introduced me to Sheikh Fatima as the one who really did a good job on the question of Qiwama and the Quran and the Sunnah, and she sat me next to her. What a huge difference. I did not see that. I did not recognize it because I was just thinking about ideas rather than the tone and the envelope in which it was being presented. But Muslim women are very sensitive to these issues. They know them by nature. They know them in their hearts. They know who's talking Islamically and who's trying to move with the same idea, but in a secular way. And I think people here realize this. And there are people who do not like the fact that we are very rational, very women and gender equitable.
Centric.
Women, not so centric as much as supporters of women's rights. And
the equality of men and women.
Yeah, and they initially like that, but then they find out that we're really very rooted in the tradition, and they get turned off. And that's where we start having difficulties and, having as much funds, having as much growth as other organizations who do this sort of thing.
Yes, but we'll continue to be who we are because that is who we are. And that's what makes us unique.
Of course, and Karama has never, as you know, taken any money, for example, from governments, precisely because the governments back home or wherever they are do not see eye to eye with what we're doing. And we don't want to be indebted to anybody by taking a position like those situations in Beijing or Copenhagen, etc. We've been independent all our lives. We answer to God and God only. We live within the law, wherever we are. And alhamdulillah, our mission and our task is to help women understand Islam. We do it every best way we can, and if that means that we will sacrifice and that at certain times there will be hardships, we will endure them. But we will keep to our line of thought, and we hope that there will be others behind us and after us who will continue this kind of approach to awakening the Muslim women and helping them understand Islam in a gender equitable way without being indebted to any force other than the force of Allah.
And our brothers, the men too, because as you say, we can't move the whole ummah forward if it's only the women doing the pushing. Well, thank you so much, Ya Aziza, for sharing with us your experiences in Beijing and more broadly, sort of in the international movement for women's rights, especially among Muslim women, to be able to establish a well-founded position, an Islamically well-founded position, arguing for the equity and equity of men and women. So I just wanted to say that it's really sad with the coronavirus now. Karama was invited to present at the some papers at the United Nations. Of course, all of those activities have been cancelled. So at least we've been able to, through this program, remind people about the fact that we were there 25 years ago. So I just wanted to let the alumna know that our next interviewee is going to be Salma Hassan Ali. She's an alumna from the class of 2010, and she will be speaking on Thursday, the 23rd of April. She will be telling us about her 30 Days, 30 Deeds blog. And then on the 23rd of May, 2020, Mr. Abed Awad, a longtime member of the Karama board and a distinguished attorney and scholar, will be talking to us about his Sharia Wiz project. It's an online platform that will allow any Muslim living in the United States who wishes to draw up a Sharia compliant will and ancillary documents to do so. And so now I want to thank Dr. Aziza again for her invaluable insights and